about his story method, and it was like, now I get it. This took place 1,000 years. This took place long before 2001, and according to Behind Exactly, it took place 1,000 years. Which I then see why in the third draft Pterodactyls escaped, which we'll go over about that film later. And something about the third film, which I could reveal why, but I have to do something first. Yes. And first time I've heard of when I saw Leakan, I accidentally mistook him to be Toa Jala. But according to the film, he had another name. I was like, what? But until like the idea, I found it took place 1,000 years. Is according to the comic Distant Danger, when I was able to look on Wikipedia pages. On PDF pages. Leakan is another guy. He first wore that Kanoe Howard 2 vent holes. The 2 vent holes that Jala's mask used to be in Mask of Light. Right. Whereas according to set wise of Jala, he had 3 vent holes. The vent holes, like the. Well, I could bring the mask shielding, but I gotta find that first. 1 minute, please. Sorry about that. I put in the camera to make it look all black. But beneath the eyes, you can see like 3 vent holes, like 1, 2, 3. Whereas Leakan had 2 vent holes in Jala, and it looked a bit catchy when they in the scene where they transformed to Taraga, because they needed to end it with the 3 virtues, which it could explain later, is that you could see that Jala once wore a red komau sitting in his Matoran, but with broken half. I think it's because one of the pods that in the final battle against between Pterodax and the Tometru, one of the pods when Matau accidentally got tilted by those giant water molded pillars, is one of the pods began to fly off, floating into the ocean, and the Tometru were trying to rescue those pods, which like the one where they missed out one of the pods and Pterodax was able to corrupt one of them, that kind of idea. One of the pods that must have drifted in the Silver Sea, that fell and floated on the Silver Sea, might have an explanation why the former mask of Jala is called which is the Komau broken half, and in exchange, he's got the Leakan's mask as Leakan technically gave it to Vakama to remember him before his death. And the favorite part about the Great Disc storyline is that I would have preferred if they did do a Tormentor. They added at least 4 minutes of the Tormentor versus Mabuzak storyline after finding the Great Discs. Then after the Mabuzak story, then they hit to the Colosseum where the Pterodax engineered the arrest of the Toa. While he cost him up Taraga Duma. I would at least prefer to see that, so that we get to see the transition of the Great Disc storyline, where they were found in the Metrus, helped to defeat Mabuzak, then Vakama merged them, which turned out to be the Disc of Time. When I was young, I found out when he quoted one of these great discs has got to be the Mask of Time in his head. That leads me to think combining them might be the explanation that they evolve into a Disc of Time. I was wondering, did he make the Vi out? Did he make the Mask of Time out of those discs that he combined the Great Discs with? But according to Bionic Sector 01, yes, he did. Yes, the Great Discs did merge into the Disc of Time. Then Vakama wore the mask and inactivated Inchala's power, but of course, because I was young and I wasn't aware, is that even Vakama is victimized by the mask's power. And the Vi fell to the sea, which we thought we'd never see it again. But exactly to that, in the Television storyline, how did Tao get the Mask of Time then? Of course, the Bionic Adventures 10 book that Greg wrote, somewhere that took place after the third draft storyline, he was able to retrieve it and the sea exposure rusting it to orange. So we get to see much more of the evolution. And one thing that puzzled me is because Greg put the story on hold due to what happened since, if you read it in Wikipedia that Greg Faustet is busy on family obligations. is what has now happened to the Mask of Time since after Voparak stole it in the Destiny War podcast. We haven't heard much of it since. And the favorite part about it is we get to see Vakama's transition from Matoran to Turaga. Matoran for the worked for the respective metros transformed into Toa, with tasks with various missions, and the fact that the body parts change, like the Toa Metro heads, like the Toa Mata heads transformed to Toa Metro heads, and then moved back to being Toa Mata heads when they became Turaga. Of course, there was a missing transformation part, which we'll go over in Web Shout, which is in the sequel to this one, and which we'll go over about the film review after. And the one thing that puzzled me is that when Mato activated the wings on his back, it looked when the scene when Mato hits that Turaga Duma billboard, or a poster or whatever, when the wings were activated, he exclaimed in excitement as if it was the first time he began flying with it. Even though before that he did fly with those wings before, such as during the search of the Great Disc and the fight against Mabuzak. I'm sure he would have used those wings to fly before. And the chute that Mato dove in to retrieve his Lemaitre Great Disc looked like he's not suffering, whereas according to the comic he was suffering. According to when you read the comic Disc of Danger and see the scene when Mato has to search for his Great Disc, you'll see why that. You see what I'm talking about. He sounds like he's going to suffer if he doesn't get out of there soon. But in this film, it doesn't look like he cares about that. And romantic ride drive. Originally, I thought they do have human emotions, but Greg says it's non-canonical because they're not supposed to be human. They're not supposed to have a human emotion. The only thing that's human emotion about them is friendship and stuff, and what they call fawning relationship. And the Matoran pods that we saw, where the Matoran got developed, and even Turaga Duma got developed, and I had a feeling that that's what the Toa Metro was supposed to be, because why? Because before the film came out, I almost noticed that the Toa Metro when they form a serial shape, it had Akuma's image, and they put arrow lines represent, you can put them in there. I was like, seriously? And looking at the film, I was like, are they serious about doing that? But technically they are. The idea about this is, I think the Toa Metro top parts clipped together, forming spherical shape, gave Greg an excuse to kind of play Matrix style out of it. What I mean by that is because I remember in Matrix, humans were dwelling in those giant pods hibernating to become inhabitants of the Matrix. But of course, these Matoran are not dreaming they're in Matrix. Because Pterodax is supposed to cleanse. What I found out is that Pterodax was supposed to cleanse their memories, so he could fill it with corruption inside, which he did win according